I have a confession. Actually, I am Jason Kucsma. That is me now. And as Molly mentioned earlier today, I'm a librarian. And it's sort of a confession because I didn't plan on being a librarian when I grew up. It was not part of my plan. I didn't dress up as a librarian as a kid for Halloween. Never wore my hair in a bun. Compared to the folks that I work with at the library, I am not particularly well-read. But nevertheless, here I am, a librarian, a fairly new librarian. I've been a librarian for about 10 years now. I've got people that I work with at the library who have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. Remarkable. And I say it's a confession because I would venture to guess that most of you don't necessarily associate librarians with technology, entertainment, and design. And that's fine. That's fine. It's okay. I'll forgive you. But I want you to walk away with three things today. First, those stereotypes about libraries and librarians are garbage. Throw them away. Second, that libraries are perfectly at home in a forum where we're discussing some of the best things our culture has to offer. Third, incredible things can happen to an individual, to an organization, when you decide to be open to all, to opportunities. Sure, I loved libraries growing up. As a kid, I devoured Beverly Cleary, Judy Blume, even though those were marketed to my younger sister. I desperately wanted to be Encyclopedia Brown. That dude was so damn cool. But it wasn't in the cards for me. I mean, when I got older, I took the library for granted. In high school, the library was a place where I went to work on a term paper, often do the next day. It was a place in college where I sought refuge from a loud, noisy dorm room. And it wasn't until I had a chance to work in the music and sound recording archives at Bowling Green State University as a graduate student in the popular culture library where I got a chance to see what it's like, kind of an impact the library can have from the other side of that desk. Even still, it wasn't in the plans. I had already embarked on a career as an independent media activist. And I say career loosely because there is not much money in independent media activism. And I was running a nonprofit organization called Allied Media Projects, and we hosted a conference for independent media makers, and we would bring hundreds of journalists, artists, filmmakers, audio documentarians to Northwest Ohio, to Bowling Green, to share the skills with each other, to learn from each other, to do our work better through collaboration and cooperation. I was also publishing a magazine called Clamor magazine, based here out of Northwest Ohio, started in Bowling Green, moved to Toledo. And in our office, and again, I use office loosely. Office was my bedroom, and then my living room, and then some rented office space here in downtown Toledo. We had an African proverb posted up on the wall, and it became kind of our sort of unspoken motto, and we put it on some t-shirts at a time too, to sort of reassert what we did. And it said, "Until lions become historians, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." And so our focus as independent media activists was about amplifying underrepresented voices and empowering individuals to be tellers of their own stories. Sounds familiar, right? TED Talks have been inspiring people for decades now. We can and should pat ourselves on our collective backs for choosing to be here at TEDxToledo today. But I want to think for a minute about the folks that aren't here. People who couldn't get out of work, folks with kids at home, folks who decided the ticket price was a little bit outside of their budget, people who would prefer that sunshine than indoors. Where did they get their TED-like inspiration? Sure, we can go online 24/7, 365 days a year and watch TED Talks in the comfort of our own bedroom in our underpants. But that inspiration is only part of the puzzle. What do you do when you're inspired in the middle of the night, you watch a TED Talk and you want to start a business? You got to work on that business plan. Or you're inspired to create the next new invention and you need a patent. And while we're talking about this theoretical, sitting around in our underpants watching TED Talks, what if you don't have a computer at home? What if you don't have broadband access? What if your mobile phone is your only connection to the online world? The Pew Center for Research has been tracking our progress towards broadband connectivity around the country for quite some time now. And a recent report reminded us that over 30% of Americans don't have broadband access at home. They also remind us something that's kind of obvious, but I think it's worth remembering, that individuals' ability to use technology to improve their lives is highly dependent on their age, their income, and their education. And so you need a place where you can find not only that TED-like inspiration, but also the resources to make that a reality. And that, my friends, is why I became a librarian. Why I traded my work in media activism focused on social justice for work in libraries, where social justice is baked into what we do. I happen to work in a magical place where incredible things happen when we just open our doors to everyone. Toledo-Lucas County Public Library sees thousands of customers come through our door every day and tens of thousands of people visiting us online. And I attribute that success to one key tenet. That success, that relevance, I contribute that to the fact that we are and always will be open to all. Regardless of where you came from, what you have, or who you are. Being open is hard. It makes you vulnerable. I think about a library in New Mexico. It's hard to think about because last year, someone came into a library in New Mexico, last month, and opened fire, killing 2 library workers and injuring 4 people. And after an incident like that, it would be easy to start second-guessing the premise of what it means to be open to all. It would be easy to start putting up barriers to access to the library, to the internet, to library. And that's not what happened. This library staff were eager to open the library as quickly as possible because they knew how important it was to the communities that they were serving. Similarly, the rains and flooding had barely subsided in Houston and Florida. And libraries were already scrambling to reopen the branches, as many branches as they could, ready to provide services as varied as the needs of the people coming in. Whether people needed access to a computer to let loved ones know that they were okay. Whether they needed access to a nonprofit organization that was providing much needed relief. Maybe they just needed somebody to talk to as they start to put the pieces of their lives back together. Think about how open you are in your life. How open are you to new ideas, new experiences, new people? We all like to think that we're pretty open, we're game for new adventures, new challenges. But the truth is we love our comfort zones, right? We like to put up our walls and preserve those comfort zones, not really thinking about what's outside of those comfort zones. Thinking about the opportunities that might be there to change our lives for the better. When the library stands behind its commitment to being open to all, it's a model for how we can live our lives. And at our public library, being open isn't just about unlocking the doors and letting people in. We work to make sure that we're a welcoming institution, a place where individuals can see themselves, where they can see their neighbors, where they can see their community, where they can see their future. And that recently put us in the spotlight when I shared this story on social media. I received an email from a customer who was upset because we had put up posters celebrating LGBT Pride Month. She wondered aloud in a familiar refrain, why was her public institution championing a worldview that was so threatening to her own worldview? I told her, I get it, Where's your story? Where's your parade? Where's your poster? I said, look, the library is open to all, and we're open and welcoming to all. I reminded her that as a straight white male, that I need only walk down the street every day, everywhere to see my worldview affirmed. That I don't have to worry about being bullied or threatened because someone thinks that my sexual orientation isn't right. I need not worry about being assaulted, arrested, or worse, because someone thinks that my skin color makes me a terrorist or a criminal. I told her that if our LGBT customers find the library a welcoming place in a world that is so often hostile to them, then we've done our job as a public institution to be open and welcoming to all. Now, she threatened to cancel her library card and stop using it, and I implored her to kind of think twice about what she had gotten from the library, what her family had gotten from the library, what the library had done for her community, and think if all of that is worth throwing out the window simply because we put up some posters celebrating inclusivity and equity. Now, I don't know if she heard me. I'm fairly confident I did not change her mind. But I do know that I will have that conversation every day before I second guess our commitment to being open to all. And for our library, being open isn't just about our buildings. We regularly work with community organizations to take our expertise, our experience, and our research and our resources out into the community. But we've been working with Us Together here in Toledo to ensure that Syrian immigrants who are moving to the region recognize the public library as a resource for them, as a place where they can get a laptop and Skype back home with family members, as a place where they can get help starting up a small business, as a place where they can find a neighbor. And I would put forth our library staff as some of the best ambassadors the region has to offer. It recently put us in touch with a young man, Mr. Yazin Kassab, 13-year-old, stopped by our Washington branch, and he learned about an essay contest that we were holding, and he won his age group responding to the prompt, "What's behind the mystery door?" And in his one-page essay, he recounted the promise he felt coming to the United States. And for him, that mystery door was the plane door. He said, on the other side of that door, I knew my life would change. I would be like a snake shedding its skin. And he went on to recount the difficulties his family faced in Syria and Jordan, and he contrasted that with the welcoming he felt to moving to the Toledo area. And in his conclusion, even though he was talking about that plane door, he could have just as easily been talking about the library when he said, when I walked through that door, I learned the value of respect. I hear these stories every day, every week, every month from our library staff about the lives that we've changed. I think about a woman who stopped by one of our branches, distraught, upset, frustrated. She had recently lost her job. She needed to apply for a new one. And I don't know how many of you applied for a job recently, but you don't just fill out a piece of paper and hand it in at the front desk anymore. You have to go online and use the internet. She had never used a computer before. So our staff taught her how to use a mouse, how to use a keyboard, how to use the internet. Can you imagine how overwhelming it would be getting on the internet for the first time today? That was a terrifying experience. But we walked her through it, she applied for a job, and she came back a few weeks later to let us know that she had gotten it. I think about another man, just met him recently, and he lives near one of our branches, and he told us about this horrific situation where he had been the victim of a mistaken identity and beaten within inches of his life. And his doctors did not expect him to regain his cognitive or communicative skills. So he stopped by the library. He talked to a children's librarian who coached him to start reading children's books. Start with the picture books and just work your way up. And this man taught himself how to read again, how to speak again, how to think again. And to this day, he credits the library for his quality of life, that librarian specifically for his quality of life. And these stories, we have plenty more of them, they reinforce one thing, which is that the library is not just a repository for books. It's people that make the library a hub for civic engagement. The library is a place where our collections, our programs, and our services are as diverse as the communities we're serving. And the library is a platform on which we can build new knowledge, new culture, new identities, our future. And most importantly, the foundation for all of those is the fact that the library is and always will be open to all. I thank you for your time today.